So this is the page that we're going to start off with. Our main page is ohiohighered.org. If you go to the home page, this is the home page, and this is how we're going to access most of our programs. The first one that we're going to access is under educators. You're going to scroll down and click on state grants and scholarships. And this page gives you access to how to operate all of our programs. This is the student page. They can go on and see the eligibility requirements. And then also on the side, there's some links for the institutions regarding the guidance memo. So we'll go over those now. So before every term begins, we send out guidance memos for each of our programs on how to operate, administer rather, on your end, those programs. We also have direct links to each of our sites. If you ever wanted to check out the expenditures that we use for our programs, you can always do that. The financial aid audit results are also posted on this page. You can check those out as well. One other form I wanted to bring to your attention, this isn't necessarily for you, but if you have a parent who wants to give us a call regarding their students' information, that parent would have to fill out a release of confidential personal information form. If a student calls or an institution calls, we'll give that information because you already have been signed off for that permission. But anyone other than the student or the institution calls, point them into this direction. So we are going to start with Alyssa, who is going to go over the financial aid audits. Each year, all of our financial aid programs are audited. So turn it over to you, Alyssa.
Good morning, everybody. Like Tamika said, I'm Alyssa Uten. I am the financial aid auditor. I'm just going to go over a few brief things. I'm not going to take too much of your time. Just want to make sure that if there's any questions that are audit specific, that we do get them out there. Hopefully, a lot of this will answer your questions ahead of time. This year, for calendar year 2021, we're going to be auditing for the academic year 2019-20 for select Ohio and Pennsylvania colleges and universities. Our plan is to audit all of our programs, which includes the Ohio College Opportunity Grant, Ohio Orphans Scholarship, Ohio Safety Officers College Memorial Fund, Nurse Education Assistance Loan Program, Choose Ohio First, and of course, Ohio National Guard. All Ohio and Pennsylvania institutions with any financial aid errors during the 2017-2018 award year will automatically be audited during the 2021 calendar year. That does not mean that institutions that have zero errors won't be audited, because we will select additional institutions based on random selection to assure that we're hitting a certain target number of audits every year. As we're going through and reviewing who we're going to audit, of course, if you had zero discrepancies, we're going to pull a minimum of 100 students. Now, for institutions that don't have 100 eligible students in their institution, we're going to actually pull all recipients during that time. For an error rate of 1 to 3% on any one of our given 9 categories, we're going to pull up to 150 students. And then at 3% or over, we're going to pull up to 200 students as necessary. Some of the required audit materials include the Institutional Student Aid Report, or the ISER, the application for admissions or enrollment agreement. We do take supplemental documentation because we know a lot of institutions process this information online now. So there may be something system generated that we'll request instead. We also require an academic transcript that includes the student's program of study. If it does not include the program of study, I may need something additional like a degree audit or something from the registrar's office indicating what program the student's in, as well as additional documentation for student consortium agreements or study abroad programs. Student account statements. your institution's current academic catalog, where I can verify some of the courses that do not actually gain credits. The academic calendar for the award year in question, tuition and fee schedules for all student enrollment statuses, cost of attendance charts for all dependency statuses, and as noted, additional documentation may be needed. The basic information that I'm going to review when I'm auditing an institution, obviously, is the student's personal and demographic information. I need to verify that they are who they are, as well as that they are Ohio residents. Student and parent income if the student is a dependent. Expected family contribution number to assure that they hit, especially with OCOG, that they're under the 2190 when it comes to the EFC to be eligible for the program. I'm going to verify the program of study to assure that it is within compliance with the information provided to us. Credits attempted and credits earned. SAP, last date of attendance, tuition and general fees charged, financial aid received, other grants and scholarships received that may be also tuition and general fees specific, application of the state grants and scholarships received from us, as well as any credit balances to assure that they do not come from any of our programs. And tips for preparing for your audit. I highly recommend that every institution take some time to double check the awards after drop add period, or of course after a student should withdraw. Most of the discrepancies that are seen are due to adjustments not being made when tuition and general fees have been adjusted. Also, I encourage everybody to use the OCOG calculator to determine if any refunds are due based on any kind of tuition adjustment. And I always ask that, when we're looking through the audit materials, I audit approximately 6 months after the close of an award year. So for this coming year, I'll be auditing the 2019-20, which just ended on June 30th. And as always, if you have any questions, we encourage you to ask. I know we get several emails, both Tamika and I, when it comes to OCOG. I don't get as many emails on the other programs, but we are all here to make sure that all of your questions are answered. Attend any training that you can that we provide. And when you're packaging a student, have the current guidance memo available, because it has all of the information that you need to make sure that the student is within compliance. And that's all I have for you. Any questions or concerns, please feel free to let any of us know, and we'll definitely reach back out to you.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Now I am going to go to our HEI system. As I mentioned earlier, it's easier if you're able to follow along with your institution. So for most of the training going forward, it will be helpful if you have your username and info. I did see someone say about the copy of the slides. Yes, we'll get a copy of the slides. I mentioned earlier that we were also going to be recording. So yes, we will get all that info out to you guys. So the general overview of the HEI system, if you want to go to our webpage, again, is ohiohighered.org. Under educators, you would select HEI system, or you can just go directly to ohiohighered.org/HEI. From this page, you can get a direct link to the new system. This is the core portal where you'll request funds. You can view our reports, the authorization page, which I'll go over in just one moment, and then also the file formats for each of our programs are available here. So for example, if you wanted to select OCOG, you would get all of the information that you needed for OCOG. The main page, which I'll show in a moment, the guidance memos. This is our previous WebEx demonstration that we already have on our web. All of the access to reports, the file formats, which I'll go over in a little bit in detail, and then all of the file documentation, which includes the error codes, the error messages, the ASCII file format. When you're pulling up eligibility for your students, you can download it in onto your screen. You can download it into a CSV file, or you can download it into the ASCII file format, and that'll show you all of the links, or excuse me, the file format for that page. So back onto the main HEI page, under the data submission information is a secure file transfer site page. And so I ask, let me, and you'll log in with your user information. And your username is your email address. If you need to send audit documents, when Alyssa sends out audit information, she'll send you all of the information that she's requesting. So when you are actually going into to send that information, you'll need to do it through our secure file site, which I provided the web address on the agenda, and it's also here. You'll upload it from your computer, and then you'll associate it with a particular program. For audits, all audit information, regardless of the program, needs to go under the HEI audit tab. If you're being audited for War Orphans, don't select War Orphans. If you're being audited for OCOG, don't select OCOG. You'll need to select the HEI audit. If you need to send any individual information regarding program, if you want a residency override, foster youth, different things that you need to send the full social security number, then that's when you would select that particular program. You only need to use this site if you have several students that you need and that you're inquiring about. If it's just one student, then just send an email with that student's full name and the last 4 digits of their social, but never send the full social via email. So you'll select that, you'll send it to the program administrator, and then just make a brief comment on that. All right, so to get access to our system, everyone needs to have access, a username and password. So each institution has a liaison that is the point of contact for their institution, and that liaison has the ability to go on and update user information. Doug, can you mute everyone? I'm not on that page. Thank you. So if the liaison, once the liaison has access, and let me show you the form for that liaison to gain access. And then, so if you go under the new HEI, the HEI authorization form, oh, that's the site. So this form is completed by that new liaison, and you would only need to complete this if the prior liaison left or if their permissions changed. And it does need to be signed off by either your institution's president or the designee, which is usually the office that the financial aid office reports to. So once that liaison has the access, they can then go onto our site and give other users access. So let me go ahead and log in. Your institution would be selected on here. It'll automatically go into a pending status. So once all this information is completed and you assign roles, and to assign a role, you would go to the HEI portal and then select which financial aid program you want them to have access to. Choose Ohio First, NEALP, OCOG, and War Orphans are the 4 programs that are in the HEI system. that HEI FX button, when that's the secure site. So you could click on that and then click on HEI FX user, and that would give that user access to that secure site. So once you do that, you would just hit create. It would come back on our end and we would approve it or make adjustments depending on what roles. If you mistakenly assigned a role, we may be able to correct that. So let's go to the HEI page. So if you're on our main page, there's a link for the system by just clicking New HEI and selecting the HEI portal. You'll have to agree to the terms. And then this is the main HEI page. So everyone should have these 4 tabs at the top. I'll start with institution management. And I'll go to the academic calendar. So every term, your academic calendar will need to be completed in order to request funds. The dates that are entered into this calendar populate your file submission windows. It opens 15 days after the start of the term and closes 30 days at the end of the term. So if you, and I'm gonna go ahead and just mark an institution. So you'll see an edit button for any window that hasn't started yet, and you'll be able to edit that window. If by chance so technically this fall term is within that open window, but because the fall has already started, you don't have the ability to edit it. But if by chance you realize that there was an error on that, you can just shoot me an email with our IT. But if you want to make those changes while your window is still open, you would just click on that edit button, select your term type, and you would do your start date, and then you'd also do your end date. And then just hit the save button. You'll have to verify that you're making those changes to your term dates and just select OK. And then this will populate your window once that window is open. Again, it'll open 15 days after whatever is your start date and close 30 days after its end date. If your window has closed and you need to request an extension, then you can do that by, under institution management, selecting appeal for submission window extension. This will also tell you when all of your windows that are currently open will close, and if you have an extension that has already been, that is either pending or already been approved. So you'll follow along the top line. Your institution will automatically be populated. You want your data area to be financial aid. There is an all file option, but don't select that because every file type has its own extension request policy, which I'll show you that in a moment. So don't select all because it'll 9 out of 10 times it'll be denied. So if you want to do an OCOG extension, you will select the OG file. And if you want to do it for any previous academic year, you can only do a refund, but certain criteria would allow you to request for new funds. So let's say I want to do an extension request for the summer term. So this is another good point. If you haven't already completed your academic calendar for the summer term, you won't get the option to do the extension. You would have to go back, request, or rather submit your academic calendar for that term and then do an extension. So let's say my fall has closed and I'm going to do an extension request for the fall. I'm going to select the 7 days, which is part of our criteria, and then whatever the reason is, if it's a late verification. And then you would just hit submit. And then you would need to confirm it. And it'll go to the program manager for review. And then you'll get an email back letting you know if it was approved or if on the off chance if it was denied. So let me show you where that, how you can access the extension request policy on our main page, which again is ohiohighered.org/SGS. And then it's a guidance memo that was sent out. And it's the HEI submission requirements page that includes all of the extension requests for each of our programs. OCOG has several different exceptions that are made. So if you follow in alignment with one of these, then you can have an extension throughout the term. At the end of the academic year, once your institution's spring term has closed, then the only exceptions would be if there are additional funds remaining for any of our programs, excuse me, then you'll be allowed to request funds up to a certain date, which is typically the end of August of that following academic year. So I'm going to go in and go through OCOG. There are several institutions, specifically Pennsylvania institutions, that are OCOG only institutions. So after OCOG, feel free to disconnect the call. We won't take any offense to it because after OCOG, the remaining of the session will be on our other Ohio programs. So I'm going to go to OCOG. And the page that I am on is ohiohighered.org/OCOG. OCOG is the state's need-based grant program. The only application is the FAFSA. So every year a student would need to renew their FAFSA, and they're automatically applying for OCOG. A student must be an Ohio resident in an associate or their first bachelor's degree or nursing diploma at an approved Ohio institution, which I'll show you that in a moment. And in that particular program that has been approved. It's financial needs, so the EFC has to be 2190 or less with the family income max of 96,000. So both criteria need to be met in order for a student to be eligible for OCOG. And this is the award chart for 2021. The award amounts are also populated on your eligibility query. You'll see some institutions that have a $0 amount or have a reduced dollar amount from their sector award. OCOG is tuition and general fee specific, and we require that the Pell be applied toward, it's included in the award amount, so you don't have to make an additional adjustment to it, but Pell is factored into the equation before an award is set for that sector. So that's why there's some institutions, example, community college and regional campuses aren't eligible because the Pell is generally high enough to be covered, or the tuition is generally high enough to be covered by the Pell. And then there's a smaller award amount for several of the private institutions and a couple of the public institutions. So these are the dollar amounts for all other institutions. The award chart shows the annual award amount. So if you're a semester institution, you would divide that in half, and that would be the amount for each term. OCOG does have what's called continuous enrollment, meaning that if a student is enrolled for all terms of the academic year, they can in essence get a bonus award amount. So if you're at a public institution that's on semesters, they would get $1,000 for the summer, $1,000 for the fall, and they could get $1,000 for the spring. a student gets a lifetime max of 10 semesters or 15 quarters over a lifetime, and that includes your older returning students who may have been a part of the previous program, the Ohio Instructional Grant. So that does factor in if they're using it for all terms of the academic year. That does shorten the life of their OCOG eligibility, but it's available. Again, so all of these amounts are annual award amounts. I'm going to show you a couple of the exceptions that would make some of the institutions receive a higher amount. But before I do that, let me go to the refund policy for OCOG, which is right here. So again, OCOG is tuition and general fee specific. So if you have a student who withdraws from the institution, if you refunded any portion of their tuition or general fees, you'd have to refund that same portion of their OCOG. If they drop before your freeze date and their enrollment drops to a different enrollment level, you'd have to make that adjustment for OCOG as well. So this is the policy if you have any questions regarding that. So as mentioned, there are a few exceptions that could make a student who doesn't receive OCOG eligible for OCOG or eligible for a greater award amount of OCOG. And those include students with intellectual disabilities, foster youth, veteran benefits, dual enrollment, and third term OCOG. So there is a statute in place that allows for students that are not in a degree program or in a certificate program, which would otherwise not be eligible for OCOG, to be eligible if they have a proven intellectual disability. This does not impact students at community colleges or regional campuses because those students are otherwise would not be eligible. But if you are at a public four-year private or proprietary institution and you have a student that is in a non-degree certificate program that again has a proven intellectual disability, they could be eligible for OCOG. You would want to keep any documentation of this in case that student is selected for an audit. Students at community colleges who are foster youth, who receive the Ohio Educational Training Voucher, can also receive OCOG. They would be eligible for that public award amount. This is in statute that those students could use their OCOG toward their housing and living expenses. Because the eligibility award amount is zero automatically at a community college, you would need to send me an email or rather a secure file with that listing of the students with their name and their full social security number. Let me know that they are receiving the ETV, and I will overwrite the $0 amount that's already populated, and it'll be populated with the public maximum award amount, which for 2021 is $2,000 for the year. You don't need to send me the ETV, just a spreadsheet or a document with that student's information. Veteran education benefits. So this is for all sectors. If you have a student who is also receiving federal education benefits, which include chapters 30, 31, 33, and the FRI scholarships only, if they're receiving that, then you can use their federal benefits toward their tuition and general fees, and they can use OCOG toward their living expenses. I would only need to override that $0 amount at community colleges, but all other sectors, you would not need to let me know that you have a student that meets this benefit, but you would need to keep all documentation in case that student is selected for an audit. But if you are at a community college, the same as for the foster youth, you'll need to send me a secure file with that student's information, their name and their full social security number so that I can make the override. Dual enrollment for students that are at regional campuses. If you have so let me back up. So if you have a student that you're at the main camp, they're splitting classes between the main campus and the regional campus. Typically, students that are only at the regional campuses would not be eligible. But if they are eligible, they may be eligible for a slightly reduced award. So that student would have to either be 51% taking the majority of their classes at the main campus, or be at the regional campus but fully be in charge the main campus tuition charges. For all of these slides, I mentioned that there's a calculator on the web, so I'll go over that next on how to calculate that. And then the final exception is for third term OCOG. So this third term OCOG, not to be confused with the last term of the academic year. So if you're on semesters and your summer, fall, and spring, third term isn't spring. In majority, third term just means that you have a student has exhausted their Pell. So third term OCOG is for students that are otherwise not eligible for OCOG or for the full OCOG. And again, it would just be for community colleges, regional campuses, and these institutions that are listed here in red. And these are also the institutions that have a reduced amount on the award chart. So you have a student that has exhausted their Pell after the second term of the academic year, then they can receive OCOG for that third term in the academic year, that full amount of their sector award amount. Because of year-round Pell, though, a lot of students aren't eligible for this, but you do have those students that have reached their LEU after the second term who may be eligible for this. So what the award chart would look like for a student who's in, again, just those institutions that I mentioned before, this is what the award chart would look like for a full-time. 0, 0 at a community college or regional campus for the first and third term, but then for that, or first and second term rather, but then for that third term, they could get $1,000 for that. Again, just once after their Pell has been exhausted for the year. And so the same breakdown is available for the 3/4 time, the half time, and the quarter time enrollment status. So I mentioned the OCOG calculators. Under the OCOG section, there's a link for calculators. So anything that had that mentioned in regarding the calculator, there is a calculator available for that. So the refund calculator. If you have a student, I showed you the refund policy. So if you have a student that dropped a class and you adjusted their tuition, then you would need to use this refund calculator to see how much of their OCOG, if any, you need to return. So I'll put in an example. Let's say their total tuition had been $5,000. You awarded them $1,000, and you're in your 50% refund period. So 2,500 was returned. So that means 500 would need to be refunded of their OCOG award. And I'll show you how to make adjustments in the OCOG system. So the tuition, excuse me, the tuition specific calculator. OCOG, again, is tuition and general fee specific. So if a student is receiving other aid that is tuition and general fee specific, even other state aid that may pay 100% of tuition, for example, National Guard or Orphans safety officers, those funds would need to be applied first. If it's 100% at a public institution, then you don't have a student that is eligible for OCOG unless they're meeting one of those exceptions in regards to veteran benefits. If it's not fully covering tuition, if you're at a private institution and you're only getting X amount, for example, for War Orphans or National Guard, then that would need to be applied prior to OCOG. And this goes the same with any private programs. If the private program is paying 100% of that student's tuition general fees, or the tuition reimbursement, the student is an employee, and if there's not a need for tuition general fees, then they would not be eligible for OCOG. If, however, it can be used for anything else, if it can be used for housing, if it can be used for lab fees, then it would not be considered tuition specific, and they could receive both. They could receive OCOG and that other scholarship. So let's put in another example. That tuition is $5,000 for the term, and then that other aid is $4,200 that they're receiving. Then their OCOG eligibility would only be $800, or up to the maximum of their enrollment for that term. So if they're a full-time at a public institution, for example, they wouldn't get $1,000, but they could get up to $800. The dual enrollment in the financial aid consortium, part of that slide, if they're at both a main campus and a regional campus, or even if they're at a private institution in a community college, and they may not be eligible for the full award amount, you can go here to see what their amount may be. And it's broken down by academic year. Behind the scenes is a Pell formula, so you do want to make sure that you select the correct academic year. So I'm going to keep them at full-time and semester, and let's say their combined tuition charges for those two institutions is $3,500. And that means that student would be only eligible for the $327 for that term. The foster youth and veteran calculators are the same. You would select the academic year, the enrollment status, the semester. So let's say this foster youth at the community college is $4,000. Then they would be eligible for, so you're putting in the tuition, the general fees, and the living expenses for that term. So that would be $4,000. So that means that they would be eligible for $827 versus the $1,000. But let's say their combined tuition, general fees, and living expenses is $6,500. You will be eligible for up to the max, for the max OCOG for the term is $1,000. So there would be full eligibility for that student. And the veteran calculator works the same. And lastly is the OCOG remaining eligibility calculator. So again, a student gets 15 quarters or 10 semesters of a lifetime of eligibility. Once they reach their last term of eligibility, they may not have a full term of eligibility remaining. So for example, if it says 0.83 on the calculator, you can go here to see, or 0.083, you can go here to see what their eligibility would be. And so even though that student is enrolled full-time at your institution, if they're only eligible for a quarter time, you'll have to request their funds at the quarter time enrollment level and request it with the corresponding award amount. I mentioned that an institution's programs, not the public's programs are eligible because they've already gone through review, but the private and the for-profit institutions, you do have to have an approved program in order for that student to be OCOG eligible. So under students, you would go to Ohio campuses, and then under independent colleges and universities, select here for, go here for a comprehensive list. And this will give each institution their certificate of authorization. So you would have to first have a certificate of authorization on file and current with our program approval area, and then only the programs that were approved, that student is eligible for OCOG. So these are things that are reviewed during a financial aid audit. So if you didn't get one of your programs approved, be sure you're not awarding that student OCOG. So once you know all of your students that are eligible, or rather the background, then I'll show you how to view the OCOG eligibility query. So again, the webpage that I'm on is hei.ohiohighered.org. Under reports, you would go to OCOG reports and then select the eligibility report. Agree. It timed me out, so let me go back. And so your institution would automatically be populated. So I'll just select institutions. Select the correct academic year. And then your report type, there's two options, cumulative and incremental. Cumulative, you would run at the beginning of the academic year, or rather when you're packaging, and you will want to run it again before you request funds. It'll show all students that are going to appear on the OCOG eligibility query. The incremental option, you would select if you wanted to run it in the middle of the term, it would only show changes from the last time you ran a cumulative roster. You have three options to display it directly on the screen. You can download it into a spreadsheet or the ASCII file report that I mentioned before. So I've already retracted personal information, but you will have on your screen that student's name and their social security number. So the report is broken down into two portions. The top are the eligible applicants, and then the bottom are ones that are either incomplete or ineligible, and I'll show you that in a moment. The transaction number is the ISER that we pulled in, the latest ISER. So we pull in the latest ISER transaction. If we can't, unfortunately, lock an ISER. So if you verified a student or did a special circumstance on a previous ISER that made the student eligible, if they go in and make a correction, or if another school goes in and makes a change, we pull in that latest ISER, and you'd have to do another one in order for that student to be eligible again. So I encourage you to request the funds as soon as you make the change, if possible, if your window is open, or encourage that student to not make a change. So this is the transaction number and the date that we processed it. And this is all information pulled from the FAFSA. If they're a dependent student, their terms of eligibility. So the remaining semesters, again, 10 semesters or 15 quarters of lifetime eligibility. And then this gives you, depending on what sector you're in, this gives you, or if you have a special award amount, this will give you the award based on enrollment level. And then the EFC and the income and the rank is information pulled from the FAFSA. So you'll scroll down and you can see that there are way more students than what's populating on the screen. In order to view all of that, you can do actions and then rows per page, and you can select all. I mentioned too that there's the second part of the report, which if you download it, you have to download each report separately. But the bottom portion is the incomplete and eligible students. And you would have that same transaction and process date and dependency status, along with the EFC and the income, and whatever the reason is that is deeming them ineligible for OCOG. You'll want to check this list just to make sure that there aren't students that you believe should be eligible. One of the most common ones is for residency. For dependent student, a residency is based on their parents' state of residence. But if that student rather has been continuously enrolled and that parent recently moved, that may be a cause for a residency override. So you can send me an email with that student's name and the last four of their social, and I can just let me know that that student has been continuously enrolled or graduated from an Ohio high school, and I can do the override. For independent students, they need to be enrolled 12 consecutive, or resident rather, for 12 consecutive months in order for the system to show them as a resident. But it depends on the date that they completed their FAFSA. If it hasn't been 12 months when they completed their FAFSA, then it's going to come back as not being an Ohio resident. But if you, on their FAFSA, it is 12 months, then you would also just shoot me an email letting me know that that they met their 12-month mark, or that they will meet their 12-month mark in the spring term, for example. Then I can override them for whatever that term is, not prior to the 12 months. So if they become a resident in August, but summer has passed, they wouldn't be eligible for the summer term, but they could receive fall and spring. There are a few other exceptions. And on that guidance memo, there's a link to the residency rules. So there are some other exceptions that an independent student could be eligible. Some of those examples would be if they married an Ohio resident and they moved to Ohio for that spouse. That would be one of the reasons. If they're in the military, that's a reason. So several other reasons. I do encourage you. That link is available on the through the OCOG guidance. So once you know all of the students that are eligible, then you would take this list and compare it against your enrollment files. So you'll want to see what enrollment that they're in, again, making sure that they're in one of the eligible approved programs, and then you're ready to request funds. Under file submission, you would go to, there's two ways, and I'll show you both ways. There are two ways. There's the manual data entry page, and then there is the submit file, which is, I call it the batch process. Your institution would automatically populate up here. You'll want your data area to be financial aid. This system works down and then over, so you'll have to complete each field going down before you can go over, or it won't populate. So I'm going to submit for an OG file. I want to do it for the autumn fall term, and I would just simply go to data entry page and then go to add record. And this is where you would put in the student information. The rank, the enrollment status, the term award amount. Our system does take dollars and cents. So if the term award amount needs a decimal, then you would just put the decimal on there. If your system does not take dollars and cents, then you would have to round down. So if our system, again, takes dollars and cents, but if your system doesn't, you will have to round down. And then you would select F if it's the first request, increase if you're making an adjustment to increase your previous request, or an R if you're reducing it from a previous request. And then you would just simply hit create. And you can continue to do this for your remaining students that you have. This is the longer way to do it. I'll show you a way that takes a moment to set up, but once you have it, it's so much easier to go through. And let's say I want to increase this award amount. And you can combine records. You can have a first request and increase. You can have a refund. So once you've added all of your students this way, you have the option to still edit it because you haven't saved the record, or you can delete it. So once you save the records to the data file, it'll save successfully, and then you'll just submit data file to edit. And so this is now going through the edit checks for errors. So while this is doing that, I'm going to show you how the other way to request funds, which is through the submit file option. So I'm selecting my institution, my financial aid data area. I'm selecting the OG file type. The submission year and the submission term will only populate on whatever window that you have open. And then you would just hit submit. This is while I'm on this page too. If the file that I just tried to submit is still processing, you can refresh your page and it'll give you a failed file, or it'll let you know that it's pending. But first I do that. Before I can submit a file, I have to create a file. So let me show you how to create a file. This way is recommended for institutions that have more than a handful of institutions. You can manually, if you have 1,000 students, you can manually go in and enter them, or you can create a file that will save you time the next term, or if you had an adjustment to make, it will save you time. It's time consuming to create it at the onset, but once you have a file, then it's easier to manage than actually manually entering in all of the students. Plus, you may have a system that can just simply upload the file. So under file documentation, under financial aid, select OCOG, and this will give you the file submissions. So you're going to start with the header, and the preferred method is Notepad or WordPad. So your header is going to be your institution, your 4-letter institution. So I'm pretending to be ITT Columbus. And then the next one is the file identifier. And if you're not sure what it is, you can create that. OCOG is OG. Then the next field is going to be your year. I'm doing 2020. Then it's the term that I want is autumn. And those are broken out here. And then the record count, let me move it so you can see it, needs to be 6 characters. So if you have, 300 students, you'll want 3 zeros and then 300. I'm just going to do, say, 3. So I want 5 zeros and then a 3. So then after your header, go back to the after your header, you'll start putting in the information for the OG file format. So you'll hit your return button, and then immediately after your header, you'll want to put in that student social security number. Then you'll want to put in your rank, which if you don't know it offhand, would be your, you can hit the rank code option. Next is the enrollment code. You can also click on that if you're not sure. The term award amount is 7 characters. So if I want to request $500, for example, then I would have 2 zeros, 500, and then the dollar and cents. So that is showing that it's $500. And then the award type is going to be F because it's the first or initial request that I've made of the term. You'll do the same for any remaining students. So I put the social security number, freshman. Let's say this student is half-time, and I previously requested them at quarter time, so now I want to do them at half-time. Then I'm going to request the difference of, let's say it's $100. and then it's an I for an increase, and then the same I would do for my last student, I'm a freshman. Let's say it's the reverse. They previously were full-time, but I want to reduce, they dropped a class, so I want to reduce their award amount. I'm going to refund $250 and $250 and let's say 50 cents. Then the R for reduction. After you get to your last record, you don't want to hit your return button. You want to leave it at the end of your last record, because when you upload the file, it's going to read any blank spaces or blank lines as additional characters or additional rows. So you want to highlight it just to make sure that everything is where you need it, that you can't see anything beyond your last record. You'll save it. You're saving it to your desktop. So just remember where you have it. And I forgot to mention that when you're creating this file, you want to make sure your cap lock button is on. Everything will need to be in caps. So once you have it saved, then you can go back to the file submission page. And so I'll remind you what I did. Your institution is up here. Your data area is financial aid. You selected the OG file format, and then the fall, the 2020 fall term. And then you would choose file. And then wherever you saved it on your desktop, it would populate here, and then you would hit submit. And that's it, you're done. So it'll go through our system to load. If it's a successful load, it'll say pending file approval. It'll come to the program manager for approval. They'll approve it, and then you'll get an email notification letting you know that your file has been approved. If there is an error on the file, which both of these are going to error because I just used generic information, then you could check it by going through your file. You could check it by clicking on the file. So this one says a failed validation error on file. You'll click on that, and then you can click over here to view the file validation report. And this will give you all of the error messages and codes and the social security numbers associated with that particular record. So if you have done a manual file, say, for example, you did a file for 50 students and one student erred, the entire file is going to error. So you can either go back to your manual data entry page and enter in all of those students. If you had created a batch file, a file that I just did in a notepad, you could just simply go through that notepad file, make the correction, and then upload it again. One of the other things that the beauty of part of our new system is that our system, if you did do a manual file, it automatically turns it into a batch file. So if you by chance did submit 50 students manually and you had that one error, you could download the file and create it into a batch file. Open it to however you saved it, and it would open up the file that you created. It's actually the one that I did yesterday. No, this is today. So it'll actually show the file, and you could it already automatically created a header. It automatically will create the file format. So you would just need to save it and then upload that file into the system, the same as if you had already created a file. I haven't been looking at the chat, so I don't know if there are any questions. Could someone tell me if there's any questions in the box before I move on?
Tamika, you have one question in there.
Can you read it to me?
I sure can. And this is actually going back to the beginning. It says the reason column of the OCOG eligibility list contains reasons a student is not eligible for OCOG. Does this mean that certain criteria have already been reviewed by the state and we do not have to review students for those specific reasons, i.e. EFC, student reg, phys app, and residency?
So I mentioned the residency. You'll want to check the residency for sure because of those reasons that I gave, either if they haven't met the 12-month criteria for independent or if their parent is not a resident. But for the other ones, no, you don't need to. Our system pulls that directly from the FAFSA. If you think it's different because you did a special circumstance, just check the date for that and make sure that if depending on the date, it takes us about 2 to 3 days to receive an updated ICER. So they may be appearing as ineligible if you just did a special circumstance and you run that report the same day, but give it a couple of days and they should appear on the eligible portion. Thanks, Alyssa.
You're welcome. We just got one more question too. And the question is, how do we determine the amount to award a student?
So you would go by the award chart. So depending on what institution you're at, that award chart that I showed earlier on, which is on our SGS page, and I can show it again, but depending on so these are the award amounts, and these again are based on the enrollment status. If you're not talking specifically about this, but if you think you have a reduced amount, you can use one of our calculators. It is up to the award amount, not to exceed the tuition and general fee cost. Thank you.
We have one more.
Okay.
Once a student does a FAFSA and becomes eligible, do they ever receive any sort of communication from ODHE telling them that they are OCOG eligible?
No, because the final determination is determined from the institution and they have to be enrolled. So a student can have up to 10 school codes on their FAFSA. So if we're saying that they're eligible, but they're at an institution that's not eligible, that's misleading. Also, if they're receiving other aid that's tuition general fee specific, we don't have that information. So the institution, by certifying the funds, is making that determination that that student is eligible. Our query will tell you who's eligible based on that EFC, that income, the residency, how many units of eligibility they have remaining, but the institution itself will let us know if they're actually enrolled in an eligible. Thank you. Okay, so once you have requested the funds, then it's going to populate on the disbursement query. So let me run that. Under report, under OCOG report, you would click disbursement report. Oh, my caps lock is on. So reports, disbursement report. And then select the academic year and then submit. So I've already saved a report that doesn't have the full student social, but yours will, along with the name. It'll show the academic year, the term, the dollar or the social and name. The transaction date is the date that the file was loaded. So I created those two files. Once it comes to the program manager, to be approved, you'll get an email back, and that's the date of the transaction. And the amount here, and then once a disbursement is made from that program manager, these will be populated, the disbursement amount and the disbursement date. If a payment hasn't been made, then both of these two columns will remain at 0. So you can scroll down to the bottom, and depending on the number of records that you have, you can submit or show all. So I did actions, rows per page, and selected all. And so at the bottom is going to be the total transaction amount and the total disbursement amount. The goal is for both of these to match. If the transaction amount is greater than the disbursement amount, then that means that we owe you funds and it'll be sent in the next disbursement. OCOG disbursements are sent out generally once a week, typically on a Monday. So it'll go out that following week after that you've requested the funds. If by chance the disbursement amount is greater than the transaction amount, then that means that your institution owes us funds. If it's within the academic year, then the funds will be captured from your next disbursement, unless you won't have any more disbursements in the academic year. Or if it's for a previous academic year that you did a refund, then for both of those cases, you'll need to send us a refund check for that amount. We don't reconcile 2 different academic years. So if you do have funds that are owed to us, the one final OCOG report, under reports, OCOG, you would click on the undisbursed funds, unrecovered funds query. And let's see, I'm going to select. Your institution's info would just populate. And you can hit the glass, the magnifying glass, to get the student-specific details. When you're on that front page, it'll just show the transactions versus disbursement. But this, if you hit the magnifying glass, it'll actually net out that information. And it'll give you just the terms. This is a snapshot of the disbursement report. It'll just show funds that have either been undisbursed or show funds that have been unrecovered, meaning that you owe us those funds. This is the 2021 academic year, so these funds are going to come from this institution's next disbursement. Again, if it was the end of the academic year, then you would need to send us a refund check. And the last thing I'm going to show you on OCOG is that refund policy, or not the refund policy, but the refund. So I'm going to go under the guidance memos. And then there's a refund policy here. And this gives you the directions on how to send refunds back and the time period that you would need to send refunds back. So I went over a lot of information. Alyssa, are there any more questions?
There is, however, it's more student specific. So I requested that she send us an email regarding the situation that she's seeing.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Rayma. Let me stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to turn it over to Rayma, who's going to go over safety officer and rules.
Thank you, Tamika. Okay, I'm going to speak on the Ohio Safety Officer College Memorial Fund and Ohio War Orphan and Severely Disabled Veterans Children Scholarship. My time is going to be a little brief because Tamika went over a vast majority of how to process funds in HEI. But the Memorial Fund offers tuition assistance to the and spouses of fallen officers and any student that was not eligible for the Ohio War Orphan program. The student must be an Ohio resident. They have to be enrolled at least part-time. For the school year 2021, 100% of instructional and general fees will be taken care of for a student who chooses an Ohio public school, $8,451 for a student who chooses an Ohio private school. The student will contact me or email me for any information or guidance they need on how to apply. They basically will receive a letter from the Ohio Police Fireman Pension Board, or they should, that indicates the fallen officer, and they'll take a copy of that to you, the institution, or if it's a member of the armed services, they should have a copy of the report of casualty and marriage certificate, taking those copies to you. At that point, you'll reach out to me to add them to the roster. The student does need to be obtaining an associate or bachelor's degree. And the benefit is good for, again, 10 semesters or 15 quarters of time. You also want to remember too, when you're requesting for this program, because it is not an HEI, that you still do make your request 15 days after the start of the term. Okay, so I'll go into the guidance memo for the Ohio Safety Officer Memorial Fund. It goes over the same things that Tamika mentioned. It does reference for the program. Okay, and I do want to make mention too that if a student does choose to be part-time status, it is one full unit that they are using of funding. It's not prorated or anything. It's still one full unit. And down below, it just goes into the breakdown for if you're a private school, the amount that you could request if you're on semesters, and the amount to request if you're a quarter school. The documents that I send to you will be this guidance memo, and it will also be this certification of eligibility. It's like a cover sheet. You'll fill this out, indicating your school name, term, year, signing, and dating. You'll also need to include a roster for the students that you're requesting. And up at the top, you'll include your school code, name, term, year, and then the student information. If you're not sure of the terms remaining, that's fine. Just put in what you believe those are, because I will track that manually on my side. And then when you get that updated roster from me, you should see the number and be able to update your records. But you'll tally the students in the total, signed, and date. You can send the roster and the certificate of eligibility back to me by mail, email, or fax. So that is about it on the Safety Officer Program. Like Tamika stated, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box, or you can email me. And on all of our guidance memos, our contact information is down at the bottom. The next program I will be speaking on is the Ohio Orphans and Severely Disabled Veterans Children's Scholarship. Due to COVID, of course, the deadline, the application deadline for this current school year was July 1, but we did go back to a deadline date of May 15 for the students. This program also provides tuition assistance. It only will cover the tuition and general fees, same as the other program. The board meets annually at the end of July to approve the amounts or funding levels and the students. This year, the board approved 100% of tuition and general fees will be taken care of at any Ohio public institution the student that is participating in the program that the student chooses, and $8,575 at any Ohio private school. Again, you have to wait 15 days after the start of the term before you can request funding. And the way this works, which I'll go into eligibility reports and all that stuff in a moment here, after the board approves the students which are placed in a pending status after I receive their application, they will immediately turn active, or I will switch them to an active status. And that is what populates them on your roster for payment. Students must be full-time. So unlike safety officers with this program, they have to be full-time. If they're a returning student, they have to maintain a cumulative GPA of 2 or better. And as we get more into the overview of the program, as you can see, again, the deadline is May 15. Anything received after that date will go towards the following school year. The student also has to be pursuing that associate's or bachelor's degree. And again, that is the same for safety officers as well. And they have to apply between the ages of 16 and 24. Just want to reiterate, this scholarship is only for their children. It's not for the spouses like that of the safety officer program. Again, it's only covering tuition and general fee, or it's tuition and general fee specific. No other costs are covered. And the student will go here to download an application, and that is what this is. The first portion is the student section that they'll fill out. The second part is the parent section, and they need to have this information I'm sorry, let me go back to the section here. They need to have all of that information filled out, including a copy of the Veterans DD 214 and award letter. They also need to include the student acknowledgement form. And basically, this is just a form that states if the student has the scholarship lapse, or if the scholarship lapse, it could be deactivated. And if they want it reactivated, they have to ensure that they're meeting all the criteria. There's some application tips on this website page to help to assist the student and the parent and any frequently asked questions. So now we will move into the guidance memo for the War Orphan Scholarship. Again, the same format. I want to reference the exceptions. If you have a student that is under the 2.0 cumulative GPA before you submit a file, if they meet these exceptions listed here, you can still submit the student for payment. However, of course, you have to make me aware. So if the student is a freshman transferring from another institution, first-time recipient of the scholarship, meaning that they don't have a freshman status, but they're in their sophomore year, you can submit those students as well. We have previously approved appeal on file, such as SAP, a documented learning disability, or an extenuating circumstances. These 6 exceptions will be okay to submit for a student that is under that 2.0 GPA. Also, right here, I speak on threshold checks. From time to time, students have an athletic scholarship or tuition remission, which will take down that full-time charge that you will submit. And so I would need just a brief explanation of what that is, and I will keep all this information on file for audit purposes. Newly added to the guidance memo for War Orphans was the file documentation. And what that speaks on is the notepad option you can use when you're submitting a file. This hyperlink will take you directly to the page to tell you how it should be listed for War Orphans. And I have that up here. So for instance, if you follow this path, home, educators, data reports, HEI system, financial aid, War Orphan, you can click on this link to see how the header should be listed, and of course, how your files should be listed, which I'm going to go into this information now. So the first thing we'll do is go ahead and log in. And as Tamika stated, it's your email and is your username and then your password. So we'll go on ahead and log in. And the first thing you want to do is run your eligibility report to see who all you can pay on for the War Orphan program. And before I populate that report, I'm going to do the same thing she did, and I'm going to filter my columns so that that personal identifying information is not shown. So I went to Actions, Select Columns, and then I'm going to take out the last name, first name, middle initial, and student ID, which is the Social Security number. And I will click Apply. And I'm just going to select a school that is currently active, but of course it won't show that information. So when you go to this page, it's already going to be on your institution. But if you have a situation where you only need this information to show, this is how you would do that. So it shows the academic year, scholarship funds received, remaining units, and of course your school code. Typically, I get questions on academic year. All that is when the student became active in the system. So just because it says 17, 18, it doesn't mean the student cannot get paid. This is just when they were made active into the system and they can receive funding. And of course, if they have those remaining terms of eligibility, they can be certified on your end to submit for payment. So as a school, you want to ensure that they're going for that associate or bachelor's degree, they are full-time, and if they are not meeting those other exceptions that they do have, and they're returning student, the 2.0 requirement met. And so you take your list over to file submission, and we want to go into manual data entry. And we're going to go on ahead and pull up the school we're using for training purposes. Okay, we select financial aid, and the file type that you want to use when you are making a War Orphan payment request is WOS certification. And because we're in that current term, it's always going to auto-populate. Give me one moment. Okay. So we want to go to the Go to Data Entry page. And you want to hit Add Record. Same thing. Some of the same things that Tamika mentioned. It's just a little bit of difference. So you'll enter your student identifier, which is the social. Student rank. GPA. If they're a first-time student, freshman, transfer, if you don't have that cumulative GPA generated just yet, it's going to be all zeros. And actually for this, so let's make this student a freshman if that's the case. And then the award amount, we can just do the $42.8750. Now, with the award amounts, as she stated, if it's a whole dollar amount, you do not need to put in your decimal or any change. I'm only putting in this amount because that's what it is for the 2021 school year. So we can enter that change. You want the delete switch to be listed as no, so N for no. If you select yes, then it will delete the file. So you only want this to be on yes if there's a payment that was approved by me and you realize, oops, I don't want to pay it, that I didn't mean to submit it, you would go back in here and enter that same information, but have your delete switch to yes to remove that file from being paid. And after that, you will hit create. And before I continue, if you have, as Tamika stated, more than one student and you prefer to do the manual data entry side, you can continue to hit add record until you have all your students listed. But for training purposes, I'll just do the one. So we'll do save record to data file. And then we'll do submit data file to edit. And as Tamika stated, you should receive an email that if it's approved, that it's in that pending status to be approved by DHE. But because this is not an actual student, it's going to bump back and it's going to generate an error. So when we go into submit file under file submission, and even before I enter all the fields, which I'm going to do, you can see under submitted files, the file name is here. So you want to click on that after it finishes processing so you can view your file validation report. And it's the same thing that Tamika was showing when she was doing her OCOG. So that's that piece. And we'll go back to manual data entry because I want to speak on the OA file. So here we are going to go back into the training school. Selecting financial aid. So the orphan adjustment is when you need to increase or reduce a file that has been approved. So we'll go into our data entry page and select add record. And as you can see, there's only 3 data fields that you need to enter. And let's say we need to reduce the payment by $1,000. So we would keep it on R for reduce. However, let's say you only entered $32.8750. So you would need to select increase if you needed, of course, to make it $1,000 more. But we'll go ahead and do reduce. You'll click create, save record to data file, and then submit data file to edit. So it would be the same thing. Now, in this case, there's not going to be anything I can do because the file, it never went through. So it's going to bump back. But just in showing you the steps, this is what you would do in that case. So the next thing that I'm going to show you is the disbursement report. And this is the report you go through to ensure that when you requested the payment, that it actually went through. but I do want to speak on the undispersed unrecovered. For War Orphan, it works the same way. If you are returning funds to the state and that refund request goes through, it's going to show as unrecovered funds. If you're waiting on payment to be received from the state, it would be on in the column of undispersed funds, and it would be in that column. So let's go back. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment so that I can go into my disbursement report. And all I'm doing right now is pulling up the disbursement report, but so that you don't see the PII, I have to filter those columns beforehand. It won't let me. It won't let me do it before I pull up the report, so I'm doing that now. Just give me a moment.
You're fine. There was one question that was listed, so while you're pulling that up, Rayma, someone asked about the 15-day. It does apply to all of our programs, OCOG, War Orphans, and NEALP. The window won't open until 15 days after the your window opens and closes 30 days after.
Okay. Thank you, Tamika.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll go on ahead and share. Okay, so I filtered the columns and it's just showing again the academic year, which is currently for the payments that would have been requested in that school year, and term, transaction amount, when it was approved to be paid, and then when it actually posted, or when that payment was generated, and the disbursement amount that was sent to you, the school. And so that's about it on my end. I know it was pretty brief, but if you have any specific questions, as Alyssa and Tamika said, in regards to students, or just need another walkthrough, please feel free to email me or give me a call, and I will go on ahead and turn it over to Lisa, who will be speaking on NEALP. Thank you.
And Rayma, while you're doing that, there's one other question on safety officers.
Sure.
Someone asked, how do they get an initial roster for safety officers?
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Typically, I will send the roster, the certificate of eligibility, and guidance memo ahead of time for schools that have requested the year before. But if you have not requested in a while, of course, I wouldn't know until the student brings you that letter. So you will know, you'll be prompted by the student because they'll bring you that information. And then you can just reach out to me by email, letting me know, hey, I have a student that needs a safety officer payment. What do I do? And then I'll go on ahead and send you that. Again, you can, once you complete it, you can email me, fax, or send it through the mail, and then the roster will be paid on. Okay, was that it?
Yes, that's it. Thank you, Rayma.
Oh, thank you.
And Lisa will be up next for NEALP.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Reed. I'm the NEALP program manager, and I'm going to go over the NEALP program, the Nurse Education Assistant Loan Program. This is the website for NEALP. This is where your students go, get all the information about NEALP, and then this is where they also apply for NEALP. The Nurse Education Assistant Loan Program is for Ohio students who are pursuing an RN degree or higher at one of the approved Ohio nursing schools. And on the website, you can see all the requirements about the program. And then as I've gone about a quarter of the way down, you'll see where it says steps to apply. NEALP students do need to complete their FAFSA prior to completing the NEALP application. And then the second step, it shows about how they can go in to complete a NEALP application. I'll go ahead and click on that. Pulls up. I'll just be able to show you what your students are seeing when they go in here. We do take out January 1 to July 15th every year for the upcoming school year. If they are a returning NEALP recipient, they can actually log in as an existing user here anytime during the year to be able to view their NEALP account. If they have never applied for NEALP previously, they would go to request NEALP account. Now this request NEALP account can only be done during the open application period and with the FAFSA on file. And so they would not be able to complete this any other time. Okay, I'm back. On this page, like I said, it states all the requirements. They do need to be an Ohio resident, U.S. citizen, be enrolled in a nursing program, not indeed for federal, any other federal financial aid programs, and they do need to be maintaining academic performance at the institution's requirements. This also, NEALP is also for the Masters of Nurse Educators. And the bottom section of the website talks about the Masters of Nurse Educator. They will apply at the same time in the same manner. After a NEALP recipient has received funding, down at the bottom of the website talks about their requirements, because this is a forgivable loan, as long as they complete the requirements of graduating with their degree, secure full-time employment in Ohio utilizing that nursing degree, and then they report back to us for 5 years showing that full-time employment. Or for a nurse educator, it does need to be 4 years of the nurse education. Okay. Over to the HEI page here. And if we go into NEALP, this is where you will go to be able to find all the information for NEALP to be able to submit a file. So I'm going to go over this really quick since we are running out of time. And Tamika has covered a lot of the information, so I will go through it. When you are ready to submit a file, you'll go back to the HEI page, and I've already logged into the page. Now with NEALP, it is a two-step process. As for after I've received the applications on July 15th, we will actually create a verification file, and you'll receive a verification guidance memo. And with that process, what is we're reaching out to the institutions, indicating the students have indicated their school on their application, and asking for you to review. Are they enrolled in the program? Do you believe they'll be eligible for the upcoming school year? And then you'll submit a file. When you receive that verification, which is normally during the month of August, when you receive that verification email, a guidance memo, you'll come into the reports. You'll go down to NEALP reports, and you'll go to the verification query. This verification will populate all the students who have indicated your school on their application. And I've already chosen one of the schools. I did take out SSNs and last names, but you'll see that it normally populates their name, their education goal that they have indicated to us on their application, the number of terms remaining in their eligibility, their funds remaining, and so that take that report to be able to look at your system to be able to see if the students are, you believe the students will be eligible for the NEALP program for the upcoming year. Now, if you have a student who is enrolled, but let's say they're not planning on starting till spring term, you can still submit that verification file to me stating that you believe they'll be eligible sometime during the term or during the academic year. Will only receive the terms that they're actually eligible. So you just wouldn't request that fall term. Now, in order to submit the file back to me, letting me know who is eligible, number one is you need to make sure that the academic calendar for the year has been completed. This is a requirement to be able to submit that NV file. So you would come into this academic calendar, you would make sure your fall, your winter, and your spring, or your fall and your spring has been entered. And then from there, you'll go to File Submit. The manual data entry is what I'm going to show you. I already showed you the batch process. Submission, your school will already be populated. We're going to use our training site. The data area is Wait, and for this, it's going to be the NV file, NEALP verification, and then the year will automatically populate, and the term is going to come up as NA because this is not a term specific. This is a file for setting up for the whole year, and then from there, you will click on Go To. Sorry, I had to. That. And then you go to add. And here is where you'll add the student's identifier or their SSN. The estimated for the year. If you have them packaged for the whole year, you can do for the whole year. Package just for fall and spring, you can do just fall and spring because NEALP is not eligible for summer term. So keep that in mind. It's only for your fall, winter, and spring, or your fall and spring. So however you do your estimated financial aid, make sure you do the same for their cost of attendance. Estimated family contribution. They do need to, you need to check that they are not in default for loans. Now, I did have a question this year. They found a student that was listed as in default, but they were in the process of resolving it and was going to have it resolved before the fall term. I did advise them to go ahead and submit the NV file. But keeping in mind that they were not to request the funding until that default was resolved. If the default was not resolved for the fall term, then they would not be eligible. They would need to wait until the spring and make sure they are out of default. Again, the delete switch needs to be no, and this is the fall term start date. So whatever your term start date is, that's what you're going to enter. And then you've got the calendar also. And you'll continue to add record until you have completely entered all of your students. In the same way that you'll save record and then you'll submit the record. So verification process has been complete, and I have received a file from all of the schools indicating who they believe are eligible for the term. Now, if you have somebody on your verification query that you believe is not eligible, you will not submit a file for them. You'll just leave them off. They'll be notified that they have been denied for the NEALP loan. Now, once we've heard back from everyone and we've determined our budget amount, I'll send out a follow-up guidance memo indicating our award amounts. We will automatically populate the award amount in the system. and then you'll be eligible to go ahead and start submitting requests for funding 50 start of the term. To be able to find out who your students are that are eligible, you'll go into the eligibility query. It's going to let you know your students. It's also going to calculate the total award amount for the term, how many terms are remaining, and what their lifetime limit they have received so far in NEALP. And because they may have gone to a different school, so keep in mind that the system will continue to talliate. So all this may not have been dispersed at your school. Once you've eligibility, the one that you'll follow, make sure that you are indicating the correct academic year. I have had a few questions this year that they indicated that when they pulled up the eligibility, they submitted the file and it errored, and it was because that student was not eligible for the current year. They were actually eligible last year. So you want to make sure that you are choosing the correct academic year. So once you have that, you're going to go back into your file submission, back into the manual data entry. Your school will populate. You go back into the area, which is financial aid. And this time, instead of the NV file, you're going to choose the NT file, NEALP certification. You're requesting the funding. It will automatically populate the submission year and the term for the window that is open for you to be able to submit. And you'll click on go to data entry page, and then your record. Here you're going to enter the student's SSN. They do need to be meeting academic performance. So no, here the system is going to error the file because the student is not eligible. So you do need to make sure that you indicate yes, that they are meeting academic. Their projected graduation date, you can use the calendar. Let's say they're graduating next year. Their student rank, 1 freshman, 2 sophomore, 3 junior, and so on. So we're going to say this one is a freshman, and there be full-time or half-time to be eligible. They're eligible for the full term award amount. Either they're less than half-time, they are not eligible. I did receive a lot of questions this year on that because they believe that they could receive it no matter how many credit hours, but they do need to make sure they are half-time. So we'll make this one full-time. This year's award amount is $540 for a quarter school. You can leave it at $540, or you can put the 0.00. And the delete switch is no for your first entry. Now, if you would submit the file and then you would find that the student is not eligible, as Rama had indicated, you could resubmit the file with that student's information prior to us issuing payment, and you can pull that record right back out. So after you have entered all your students, so let's say you have 10, you'll continue the process until you have all 10 students entered, and then save the record, submit. As long as the file did not error, I will automatically receive an email letting me know that you've submitted the file, and then I can issue payment. I normally make payments or initiate the payment at the end of the week. So all the files that are submitted Monday through Thursday usually get paid on Friday. Or, if it's a really busy time, I'll make payments twice a week. Now, to be able to see your file activity, you can submit file. And this is where and also how to do the batch process. And your institutional automatically financial aid. And you'll see that all the files that we've created populated over here on the right-hand side. And you can see here for the NV file, it has errored. And so if you would click that file to be able to see what the error message is, indicating that you've record, and you do have 2 errors on that record. If you click the view file validation report, this is going to show you your error. And so that way you can correct it and you can the file. Now keep in mind, if you have any errors, not receive notification of this file at all. That was another thing that was brought up this year. Someone had submitted a file. They received an error on one student, but not on all the students. And so they thought that I still received the file, and I did not. So keep that in mind. If any errors, I will not receive it. And Tamika showed to be able to correct it. If it's an easy correct, you can click on view, download, put it into Notepad, and then you can resubmit the file. I do want to show you the disbursement report. So after you have submitted your file, submitted with no errors, and if you go to the disbursement report, this is how it will look, indicating the student's information and that you have requested this amount on this day. And then you'll see the disbursement amount and the disbursement date is empty at this time because no payment has been made on our behalf. Now, I'll show you another school that has submitted a request and payment has been made, so that way you can see the difference. This one, like I said, they requested the disbursement and then we dispersed the amount, and you can see that this report is complete. And it's been done. Now, the only report for NEALP is the undispersed and recovered, and Tamika went over that, how you can check under there for any of yours to see if you owe a refund, if you've indicated, or if we're owing you money. Now, thing for NEALP is the NA file, and the NA file is the refund file. You can or for increase. So let's say that you submitted a file and you submitted it for 500, and actually you were eligible for, the student was eligible for 540. You can come in here to the NA adjustment and you can indicate that you want to request that additional $40 that not request. We'll go record and we put the student's information for their SSN. The amount you're either requesting to receive or requesting to refund would go here. So if we were asking for an increase, you would just add the and you would do I for increase. If you're doing a refund, of course, it's R for return. And then create, add record, you'll save, and you'll submit. I do believe that that pretty much wraps up NEALP.
Lisa, you had one question. You have one question on a student that is 3/4 time.
First time, because the system was not actually created for someone to put in 3/4. You can either indicate the full time or the half time, and the student would still be eligible for that full amount.
And that is it for the questions. Oh, someone just said, what about the EFC for the student? Am I entering what was on their ICER?
Yeah, I'm kind of confused as for exactly what she's asking.
So the answer would be yes. If you're doing your own calculation on an EFC, you would use the EFC that's pulled from the FAFSA.
Yes. Okay, I've got you now.
I don't see any more questions. Yep, here goes one. Is there a specific process if a student who received NEALP disbursements has withdrawn from the school's program?
A refund policy, and that is actually in the guidance memo. And so you'll go to your guidance memo, and when I actually email it, there is a link in the guidance memo that indicates if you have a student that withdraws before the end of the term and how to calculate the refund process. And if you need me to send you that link, I think that came from Courtney. You can email me and I'll be glad to send you that directly.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. There was one thing, I'm gonna share my screen real quick. There was one thing that I didn't mention that pertains to all of our rosters when the disbursement roster. So let me show that real fast. So we all mentioned that we submit payments weekly. So if you get a payment email saying that funds are going to be dispersed to your institution and that amount is different than what you were expecting, you can go to the disbursement roster and do a query that'll specifically show what that payment is for. And I'll show you how to do that under actions and then filter. Under the column, you would do the disbursement date and then the date and then contains, and then the date you want to select is the date of that email, let you know that funds are going to be dispersed. So this one was, see, September 28th, and then just hit apply. And it'll only show the students that are included in that check. And a lot of times what makes the difference of what you may have been expecting is if you submitted a refund, for example, and I believe this is one. So this particular institution was expecting just a fall refund, or excuse me, a fall disbursement, but there was a summer adjustment that was captured from the fall disbursement. So that would be the reason why your check is lower than just what it would have been if it was strictly fall payment. I don't think, oh, there was one other question. Someone asked about how to get specifics on OCOG, and the same with our other programs. You would go to the guidance memo and it answers the questions regarding GPA, satisfactory academic progress. There was a question regarding DACA. So all students that have an eligible ICER are eligible. If by chance that DACA student isn't assigned an EFC or income from on their FAFSA, then unfortunately they would not be eligible for state aid. If you are, however, able to change their FAFSA information, then a DACA student could be eligible, assuming that they meet all other eligibility requirements. Were there any other questions that I missed? We have one more. I'm gonna pull up our contact. So we do have one other program, two other programs rather, that are financial aid. One is the Choose Ohio First program. I just wanted to mention that the RFP process opened up last month. So you can go to ohiohighered.org/COF to get that Choose Ohio First information. And they're now in the HEI system and have been doing their own training, which is why they weren't included in this one. And then the last one is Gear Up, which is a federal funds that student, in particular in certain programs, are eligible for OCOG. So we went over a lot of information. Here's the contact information for all of us, including Gear Up and Choose Ohio First. If you have any questions, please feel free to call us or email. If you have student-specific questions, send the name and the last four of the social security number. If it's more than a couple of students, please use that secure file. Just a reminder, do not send social security numbers via email. Am I missing anything from the chat? Any other last questions?
We do have a question, and it wants to know if we would happen to have an Ohio National Guard training representative.
So Ohio National Guard isn't administered through the Ohio Department of Higher Ed. It's administered through the Adjutant General's office. I can give you that that information. I didn't think about including that on here, but let me see. If you want to email me, I can send you that information. Were there any other questions?
That seems to be it.
As I mentioned, we're going to send out the slides that we presented, and then this was recorded, so we'll include that link as well, put it on our website, but I'll also send an email to everyone that's attended. Thank you all so much for your time and for joining us, and everyone have a great afternoon.